The rain came down like a tired sysadmin clearing old logs, steady, gray, and full of things nobody wanted to read. I sat behind my desk with the lamp pulled low, a glass of bourbon catching the light, and a stack of case files that looked heavier than paper had any right to be. Most weeks, the big story walks in wearing a dirty overcoat, a 0 day and a firewall, a ransomware crew with a new name and the same old hunger, a breach disclosure written by lawyers and translated by fear. But this week, the thing eating at me was not a breach. It was the absence of one I could honestly name. August 21, 2026, sat on the calendar like a locked door. The brief on my desk said the truth plain. Without live sources, without current advisories, without fresh disclosures, no honest investigator can identify the single most significant cybersecurity event of the past 7 days. That may sound like a technical limitation. It is not, it is the story. In this trade, bad facts are not harmless. They are malware for the mind. Here is what happened. The requested assignment was simple on the surface. Pick the top cybersecurity story from August 14 through August 24, 2020, 2020. The kind with names, dates, CVE numbers, threat actors, impact, and a hard look at what it all means. But there was a catch, the kind that waits in the alley with a cigarette and a grin. The available knowledge did not extend into that future week. No live web access was provided, no candidate incidents were supplied, no current CISA advisory, vendor bulletin, SEC filing, court document, threat intelligence report, or incident statement was placed in evidence. That means the usual chain of custody was broken before the case began. A responsible analysis of a current cyber event needs primary or near primary source material. For vulnerabilities, that means vendor advisories from Microsoft, Cisco, Fortinet, Palo Alto Networks, Ivanti, VMware, or Broadcom, Citrix, Atlassian, Google, Apple, and others. It means CISA known exploited vulnerabilities entries, emergency directives, or alerts. For criminal campaigns, it means DOJ indictments, FBI flash notices, Europol releases, NCA statements, blockchain tracing, leak site activity, and victim disclosures. For corporate incidents, it means SEC Form 8K filings, regulatory notices, customer letters, and statements from the affected firm. Without those, all you have is fog and a hungry deadline. The technical problem is not that no cyber event occurred during that week. In any modern week, the networked world produces enough misery to keep 100 incident response teams awake. Somewhere, credentials were stolen through InfoStealer logs. Somewhere, an edge device was probed by an actor who knew the patch cycle better than the defenders. Somewhere, a cloud bucket was misconfigured, a software supply chain was poisoned, a phishing kit learned a new trick, or a hospital weighed downtime against extortion. The problem is that I cannot reliably tell you which of those happened, who did it, what systems were affected, what CVEs were involved, or what evidence supports the claim. And so the only precise finding is this. The briefing request encountered an evidentiary gap. The analyst could not determine the top cybersecurity story for August 14 through August 24, 2026 from available public information inside the model's knowledge boundary. The current status is unresolved pending live sourcing or user-provided candidates. The scale and scope are not measurable because no incident has been verified. That is not a failure of imagination. It is the discipline that separates intelligence work from rumor with a nice suit. Why does that matter? Because cybersecurity has a bad habit of rewarding speed before accuracy. The first voice into the room often gets treated like the smartest one, even if it is only the loudest. We saw this pattern long before 2026. After major incidents, speculation blooms fast. Attribution gets pinned on a nation-state before the logs are cold. Ransomware names are repeated before wallet trails are checked. A vulnerability gets called mass exploited because a scanner found exposed systems, not because compromise has been confirmed. The market likes certainty. Executives like simple answers. Social feeds like panic. Attackers like all three. This is the systemic weakness nobody patches. Not a CVE in code, but a CVE in process. Cybersecurity depends on trust and evidence, yet the information ecosystem around it is built for acceleration. Vendor blogs compete for attention. Threat actors lie on leak sites. Victims minimize harm. Researchers sometimes overstate novelty. Governments disclose selectively. Journalists work under pressure. Analysts fill gaps with pattern recognition, which is useful until it becomes a Ouija board. The result is a battlefield where defenders may act on claims that are incomplete, unverified, or wrong. The cost is not abstract. If an organization chases the wrong headline, it burns time it does not have. A false top story can redirect patch teams away from a truly exploited device class. It can cause boards to ask the wrong questions. It can make security teams deploy detections for malware that is not in their environment while missing plain credential theft already underway. It can panic customers, distort regulatory reporting, and create noise that hides the signal. In a week with one real emergency and 10 rumored ones, bad analysis is not neutral. It helps the adversary by wasting the defender's attention. There is another layer, darker and more geopolitical. Modern cyber events are no longer just technical incidents. They are instruments of state pressure, criminal finance, market movement, and public narrative. A fabricated or poorly sourced claim about a breach at an energy firm, defense contractor, election vendor, cloud provider, or hospital network can move money, shape policy, and feed propaganda. In an era of information operations, the fake story about the breach can do damage even when the breach never happened. Sometimes the rumor is the payload. That is why I take a hard stance here. If you cannot verify the story, you do not crown it the story of the week. You do not invent a CVE. You do not conjure a threat actor. You do not write a ransom note into existence because the format demands drama. Cybersecurity analysis is not theater, even when a man in a wrinkled suit narrates it under a desk lamp. It is a profession built on evidence, probability, and humility. The sentence, "I do not know," may not trend, but it has saved more systems than confident nonsense ever will. And yet, this is not an argument for paralysis, it is an argument for method. When the facts are missing, the next move is to build the collection plan. Start with CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog and alerts for the week in question. Check vendor advisories for emergency patches, especially for perimeter technologies like VPNs, firewalls, identity appliances, remote access gateways, and collaboration platforms. Review Microsoft's Security Response Center, Google's Chrome and Android bulletins, Apple's security releases, Cisco advisories, Fortinet PSRT notes, Palo Alto Networks advisories, Ivanti bulletins, Citrix alerts, Atlassian advisories, and Broadcom VMware notices. Then move to evidence of harm. Pull SEC 8K cyber incident disclosures, state reach notifications, law enforcement releases, and statements from affected firms. Check threat intelligence from Mandiant, Microsoft Threat Intelligence, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Unit 42, ESET, Sophos, Rapid7, Recorded Future, and others. Look for convergence. One source makes a lead. 3 independent sources make a case. Primary evidence makes it stand up in court. What comes next is simple, but not easy. Organizations should treat this episode as a reminder to harden their own decision process. Build a weekly cyber intelligence routine that separates confirmed facts, credible claims, and open questions. Assign confidence levels. Track source quality. Demand original links before action is escalated. Maintain an emergency patch triage model that weighs exploitability, exposure, business criticality, and known exploitation. Make sure asset inventory is good enough to answer the first question every advisory asks, which is whether you are exposed at all. Over the next 6 to 12 months, the pressure to automate cyber analysis will only grow. Artificial intelligence will summarize alerts, draft reports, generate executive briefings, and maybe whisper recommendations into the ears of tired defenders at 3 in the morning. That will help, but only if the machines are chained to evidence. If not, they will industrialize rumor. The unanswered question is not whether AI can write a convincing cyber briefing. It can. The question is whether the briefing is true, whether its claims trace back to sources, and whether a human with judgment is willing to say no when the evidence does not hold. So here is the recommendation from this old gumshoe. Do not ask your intelligence process to be impressive. Ask it to be accountable. Keep a source register. Preserve links and timestamps. Record confidence judgments. Review bad calls after the fact. Train executives to respect uncertainty instead of punishing it. And when a current event cannot be verified, say so plainly. That is not weakness, that is tradecraft. I set the bourbon down and listened to the rain work the glass-like fingers on a locked safe. Some weeks the enemy is a ransomware crew. Some weeks it is a 0 day with a number and a body count. And some weeks the enemy is the temptation to sound certain in the dark. In this line of work, vigilance is not just watching the wire. It is watching the truth, because once that gets breached, every other defense starts to look like a painted door.